Yes.
Hi, finally.
Hi, finally, it's working. Great.
Takes a bit
I
of
mean,
time.
this is the first time. Yeah, but this is the first for me. It has never happened to me, so I was wondering what's happening. So yes, hi, good to see you, and a very warm welcome to Mocha Moments.
Thank you.
And
Thank you so much.
and how have you been? I mean, I know you're based in Seattle, so how has it been? How is quarantine going? Are you homebound? What are you doing? What are you up to there?
Yeah, pretty much homebound. Been homebound for many months now. And
Okay.
for me, it hasn't made that much of a difference because I am homebound even without the pandemic. So I work from home.
Okay.
Of course,
Okay.
I go out from time to time to, meet friends and socialize. That hasn't been
Okay.
possible too much. But overall, work-wise, I work from home anyway. So it hasn't made that much of a difference to my life.
Okay. Okay. Great. So, for the rest of the viewers, this is Siddhartha Vaidyanathan, and he's the author of this book, "What's Wrong with You, Karthik," and this is his debut novel. And just to give you a little bit of an introduction, he's a writer and editor based in Seattle. He has worked at ESPN Cricinfo and Wall Street Journal, and he has contributed to publications like Guardian, Forbes, and Wisden. And this is his first book. So we will be talking about, yes, definitely this book, his writing process, and a whole lot of other things. So first, tell me. I mean, you're homebound. You're saying it is like recently you've always been homebound as far as your work is concerned. So what about reading, writing? A lot more happening of that.
Yes, so since in 2012, I quit my full-time job and with the
Okay.
intention of reading and writing more. Of course,
Okay.
I have to still keep going, so I do quite a bit of freelance writing. I'm also an editor, which keeps
Okay.
me going. So I edit both academic publications as well as sports and various other things. But
Right.
yeah, reading and writing is what I really would like to do most of and spend most of my days doing. It's not always
Okay.
easy because I have a family. I have two little girls to also take care of, so they can be
Okay.
a lovely distraction. So, but yeah, I try to sneak in as much of reading and writing as possible.
Okay, so what was the last book that you read,
The
which sort of
last
really had an impact on you?
Actually, this year I've been reading a lot of short stories. I think
Oh, okay, that's one of
it's
my favorites.
yeah, I think it's because my attention span and with all this distraction is not really been good enough for the big novel. So I've been doing short stories. I read one at a time, which gives me nice satisfaction, one a day.
Okay.
So I've been reading a lot of Alice Munro, the
Oh,
writer of
yes,
short
yes,
stories. Yeah,
yes,
wonderful
yes.
writer. I read a book called Too Much Happiness recently, which is a
Hmm.
collection of 10 short stories.
Okay.
Remarkable writer, and yeah, everyone should read Alice Munro if you haven't read her already.
She is fabulous. She's one of my short story favorite short stories writers. Good. So why don't you introduce Karthik to our viewers? I think that's the first thing you should do, because I don't know how many of the viewers have read, but I'm sure some of them have read and some haven't. So why don't you just introduce Karthik, and who is Karthik, and what is wrong? We'll come to it later. But who is Karthik?
Firstly, Karthik is not me. That I have to clear that straight off because a lot of
I would
times
have come to
people.
that question later, but you answered it yourself. It's okay.
Yeah, so Karthik is a 12-year-old boy, and
Okay.
he's very different from who I was as a 12-year-old boy in a way, which I'm glad that I created him because it always gives you a bit of satisfaction to create a new character rather than just draw on who you were. Karthik is very smart in a sense of observant. He watches everyone around him very closely. He watches everything around him very closely. And I had to find a reason to make Karthik observant. So I realized that, the boys who are nervous or kids who are nervous tend to be far more observant than kids who are not.
True.
Because, if you're confident and if you feel that the world is your stage, then you don't really have to worry about what this person is thinking and what that person is looking, and what you don't have to observe so closely. So Karthik is a fiercely observant, nervous child who wants to please everyone around him, and that is the problem, that he finds that, obviously everyone knows that you can't please everybody. There are always people that you will upset, but as a kid you want to please everyone, and so this gets him into some problems, as you will realize when you read the book.
And then how he faces those problems and comes out of it.
Yes, how he faces those problems and comes out of it. The other thing is that one of the things I wanted Karthik to have throughout the book is I wanted him to have a lot of challenges. So that makes his journey even more interesting. So I put him from, he goes from this alternate schooling to an elite school, which is very particular about exams and competition and things like that. Karthik also is new to the school, as I've said, which means that, he has to fit in. He has to find his set of friends. He has to find his comfort zone, which takes some time. He's subject to quite a bit of bullying early on. So, through the book, Karthik faces a lot of challenges. And being an observant kind, he is very watchful of each and every moment and how he feels at each time and how he reacts.
True. And if I may add to that, it's two spheres. It's the school where he's negotiating, his life and his students, his fellow students, the teachers, and then everybody, and the home front, where he has this, demanding set of, not set maybe, the father and the grandfather, right? So that is a second level of negotiation that he's doing. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what I
So
wanted to, yeah.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you continue what you were saying.
No, I think that is the other thing that I did very consciously, is that I needed the two worlds to be totally different from each other, which would again make the book very interesting. So the home is, a typical conservative Indian middle class home, upper middle class, or at least trying to move to the upper middle class home. And the school is, lawless in many aspects, because it's an all boys school, and an all boys school doesn't really care much for rules and regulations, especially when the teachers are not watching. So I wanted that, set of rules on one side and lawlessness on the other side, to contrast how his days go.
Absolutely. So, Siddharth, from being a sports journalist, in fact, he's quite a popular sports journalist, to academic writing, editing. What is it that sparked you to dive into the shoes of a child who is struggling to fit in, who is not part of the so-called cool set of boys that you find in the school? So what made you, this is your first novel, considering it's your first novel, what made you sort of shift and start writing about this young little 12-year-old boy?
Yeah, so I've always, been a reader, and I've thoroughly enjoyed reading fiction. Even though I'm a journalist, I have somehow veered more to fiction than to non-fiction. Of course, I read a lot of non-fiction, but if given a choice, I would pick up a book of fiction anytime, because it's relaxing. It also tends to be very personal. Reading a book is a personal experience. So among all the writers that I've enjoyed, many of them have written about children, or many of them have written about their childhood. I'm talking about writers like R.K. Narayan, Mark Twain, V.S. Naipaul. Many of them have mined their childhood for things. So obviously that has had an impact on me. And, I've also personally I love children. I've been fascinated with children. I like talking to children of all ages. I think they're very original. And I think we can learn a lot. We can learn a lot from children, probably far more from children than we can from adults sometimes. So bringing that together, I think it was instinctive in a way that I wanted to write about children, but I just didn't know how. But this 12-year-old came to me at some point, so I just ran with it.
Great. The way you have written it, I mean, for those who haven't read, It's a delightful book, and why, I'll tell you. It's written in a very lucid language, and it flows very easily. And what you've done, and I find it beautiful, is you've actually contrasted, moods so beautifully. It's checkered with very poignant and very moving sort of incidents on one hand, and on the other hand there are these incidents filled with humor and a lot of boisterousness, which you generally find in a boys school, or when boys are with friends. And you've done that beautifully. I'm sure you've drawn a little from your experiences,
Sure, yes,
from your, I
absolutely.
mean, did you do your schooling in Bangalore also?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So
You did. Okay,
a lot of
okay,
the experiences and a lot of the environment in which the book is set has been drawn from my memories. Absolutely.
okay,
I did
okay.
my schooling in Bangalore. I went to an all boys school. I had a very caring and loving grandfather who I looked up to a lot. I would say he was my first hero. And the
Oh,
grandfather
okay.
character in this book is
Is
definitely,
so strong.
yes, is
Now I
definitely
know.
based
That
on
is
him.
why.
Yes, but at the
So you
same
you
time,
must have had a very, very close relationship with your grandfather, and that is why Tata in this book is such a strong character.
yes, absolutely. My both my parents worked, so I spent a lot of my time at home with my grandfather, with my tata.
Okay.
In
Okay.
the evenings when I used to come back from school, it used to be him who used to be there, and my parents used to come back a little later. And similarly, in the summer holidays, now I was a single child, and anyone who's a single child knows how boring it can get, when you are by yourself. But Tata was my companion in that sense, because in the summer holidays you have these 2.5 months free, and your parents are at work every day, so you need somebody, and this was that somebody who was there. And so, but what I want to say is that even though the environment and the situations are drawn from my memory, the characters themselves are pretty much new. Like, I didn't grow up in a family that was as deeply religious as Karthik does. My family was, we, of course, we went to temples and we did a few of we celebrated all the festivals and everything, but Karthik's family is slightly more towards the
More
conservative
religious, yeah,
side,
yeah,
more
yeah.
religious. And in school as well, almost all the characters in that school are not drawn from any one or any particular people. Like, you can't correlate. Many of
Okay.
my friends from school read the book and they're like, who is this again and who's that again? And
Oh,
they're
I
all
was thinking the opposite. I thought friends and teachers must have got back saying, "Hey, you let the cat out of the bag. Why did you, spill the beans and share all the stuff that we did in school?" So I'm sure there are bits of that also.
Oh yeah, there are bits of that, and I have let a few secrets out of the bag, including the title of the first chapter, which of course is,
Oh,
was was uh, was real. It was real. The title of the first chapter is Bingo. So whoever's read the book
bingo. Okay, yes, yeah.
will know what I'm talking about.
Hmm,
But the characters themselves, you cannot correlate to any particular boy or any particular teacher. They're all a mixture of people.
okay, okay, okay. Um, what I actually felt coming to me more strongly, I don't know other readers have felt it or not, or they will feel it or not, that yes, you have sort of entered the internal landscape of a adolescent's mind, of a young boy's mind, but through his very innocent gaze, you're actually sort of showing us our world. That's what I felt. There are places where, as an adult, you actually wonder. I mean, yeah, this is the way we react, or yeah, I mean, this is the way we respond, and then you sort of start questioning that maybe this is not how the way we should react or respond. So, I mean, what I'm trying to say is, though it's a book about this little boy and his journey and all the trials, you have in a very clever way, in a very subtle way, you have actually spoken about a lot of issues which are there in our current world and society. I mean, which is there, it is a global issue. How much do you think that our actions, our words, our adults, our intricacies of our interpersonal personal relationship, how much of that influences a child, and then the child forms opinions based on that? And I saw that in Karthik. He was watching his parents, he was watching his grandparents, and he was forming an opinion. Right or wrong comes later, but
Yeah, I think
so
hugely. I think kids are heavily influenced by parents and everyone around them, because often the first words and the first experiences they have are at home. And if I see that with my kids, I mean, they're much younger, of course, than Karthik, but I see that any word that I use, it sticks, and any phrase that I use,
absolutely.
it sticks. I mean, that's why we say, we try and avoid swearing in front of our children and things, because it just sticks in them and they pick it up and they repeat it. But
Even mannerisms.
even mannerisms, exactly. I mean, that day my eldest daughter is 4.5, and she was saying something which sounded exactly like the way my wife would say it, and she was saying it even without meaning to. So obviously, subconsciously, she has seen that way in which my wife talks, and she's talking in that way, and it was a little bizarre for me to hear that. It's like, oh my God, have you grown up already? Just hang on. But the other thing that kids also have this tendency of doing is they tend to often blame themselves for the problems around them. So if suppose their parents are having a fight, the kids tend to blame themselves, thinking that they are the reasons why this has happened. Or
True.
if the mom is in a bad mood, the kid automatically feels that, oh, maybe I have done something to put her in the bad mood, not realizing that she of course has another entirely different life where she can be upset about so many other things. So I wanted to bring out those aspects of how a kid deals with these situations. And you know as a single child, you have a lot of time to think. And so
True, true.
Karthik spends a lot of time analyzing all these issues within himself. And the reader then gets to know it. It's all internal thoughts, but the reader, of course, is exposed to that.
And that is what I think is the magic of the book, that internal monologue which goes on. Because, you're literally sitting and, opening the window to this child's mind, and you're like, reading a child's mind. And I think that was fascinating. And the few things which again came up to me, there are two situations, as I said: the school, his friends, and the home. Now, this is, I think, set in the early 90s. That's what was,
Yeah,
I think,
93 to 94,
mentioned.
93 to
93
94. Yeah.
93 to 94. So I was just thinking, compared to what, say, our generation, compared to what our parents were and our equation was with our parents, things have changed. Those boundaries, the strict boundaries which we had with our parents are sort of not there. So there are certain changes definitely which has come in today's world. But obviously we still need to work so much. But I feel, has things changed in school, in the school environment? Because whatever is happening in, say, even in the book, in the 93 94 period that you're saying, I would say it still happens now. And the thing which I wanted to speak about is boys who are not so-called man enough, if they haven't ticked all the boxes to be man enough, are the ones who are then picked on, are the ones who are then bullied, are the ones, I mean, we see evidences of this. I'm sure all of us have seen evidences of this within our family, within our friends, and we still see. So I don't know. I mean, what can we do at some level, at our level, to bring a slight shift? I don't think any huge shift will happen, but what can we do you think, to bring a shift in this arena?
Yeah, it's very hard and it's very challenging, because at that age, boys and even girls, children don't want to share many things. They are
Yep.
often withdrawn. It's very difficult to get anything out of them, because a lot of the times they think what they're doing is wrong, and they think that it is their fault, and that whatever is happening to them is all because what they have done. And that if they tell their parents, or if they tell whoever, that they're going to get pulled up. So I think the first thing to do, I mean, see, the interesting thing is that I was pretty close to my mother when I was growing up. I still am, but I was very close to her when I was growing up. But she read the book and she's like, "Are you serious? Did all this happen?" And it struck me that it doesn't, even despite how close we are, and we aren't even that far apart in age. She had me very young. so which
Okay.
means that she's not too much older than me. But despite that, I obviously didn't share so many things that went on in school, and I kept everything to myself. So that's a big challenge. How does one get the kids to open up? Maybe schools do have now. I think schools do have
They have counselors, yes.
counseling
Schools
and
have
other things which are
counselors,
very
yes.
good, which was never there, which was hardly there when we were there. I mean, there was very few schools that had that. The other big problem now is technology. With gadgets
Yes,
and all
yes,
the attendant problems there, how do you then stop that? So there are challenges, but I think one thing that one can definitely do is, as I mentioned in the book, is to I mean, as I mentioned through characters in the book, is to try and educate and tell boys that it's okay to be different, and that just because
absolutely.
there is a classmate of yours who is not as manly as you think one should be,
Exactly.
it doesn't mean that they are any lesser than you. I mean, they could be better than you in so many other ways. Just because they don't have your booming voice or your muscles or whatever, or your behavior, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that they are not things. So I think that kind of education will really help, because those ideas are set in pretty early. Homophobic ideas, misogynistic ideas, they set in pretty early. Like if you see a group of boys talking about women or talking about girls, you will read such conversations in the book, and they probably sound funny in the book because it's in the boys context, but if you look at it as an adult, it's actually pretty
Yes,
serious. You don't want
absolutely.
your boys to be talking like that. So talking to them about conversations about their attitudes towards women, or those kind of things will definitely, I think, make a slight difference moving forward, especially in a world where these are open issues now. I mean, back then, people didn't talk about homophobia that much, or homosexuality
Absolutely.
that much. It was
Absolutely.
just like understood that you keep quiet about it. But now it's an open subject, and so why not talk to our kids about it as well?
And yeah, you have mentioned that thing of that allure of masculinity, or how hyper masculinity of having muscles and the perfect physique and stuff. And in fact, just to share that you see this so much happening, and what you said is true. Is yes, educating the boys or our sons, but I also feel is we need to educate the adults too. I'll share. We are digressing, but I'll share two incidents. I have a friend who shared this with me just a few months back about her boy, who is good in studies, maxes his maths, is an excellent pianist, but he's thin, he's lanky, he's soft spoken, he's not into sports, and he is having a harrowing time in school. So I'm saying this is one, and the other is a conversation I overheard recently, and it's very interesting. And I'm saying this for those of you who have tuned in. Is there were two ladies who were discussing their sons, and one of the ladies actually said, "Yes, my son is not boisterous enough and not loud enough. After all, he's a boy." And I just couldn't believe my ears that a mother is saying this. So it is actually something which we have to work with in the level of our families, our friends, in the adult arena, that this is not a benchmark. Being boisterous or swearing unabashedly is not something cool, or not something that you can tick to be man enough. And I think it's so good that you've brought that up in your book, because this is something people need to talk about, and
Absolutely. And I
in
think
all
even
levels.
small things like, you're absolutely right. The parents too need to understand and need to be educated on several of these aspects. And at the most minute level, language plays such a big difference in this. Like, the things you
Yes.
say, like, a simple thing that you say, dude, many boys, I'm sure many boys have heard in their lives, is don't cry like a girl.
Oh
And
yes.
that
Oh
that
yes.
automatically puts in a thought in your head that, okay, a girl is weak and a boy is strong, and this is ridiculous, because why would you want to make say such a thing, because that's not even true. So those minute uses of language, uses of phrases, I think those are things that we have to be very conscious about, at a parental level, as well as at a for teachers and for everyone. to look
Educators,
into.
everybody. There is one incident in your book which I found extremely moving, and it's related to what we're talking about right now. This whole thing of boys not wanting to cry in front of others, where Karthik didn't want to cry or break down in school. Neither did he do that at home, and he was sitting at a bus stop and crying. So this is what I was trying to say, that your book on the top, it's full of humor, and I found myself laughing so many times, but at below the surface, the undercurrent of so many issues which sort of strikes you as an adult, as a parent, everything. This boy who is unable to open up in school, who's unable to open up with his parents, is sitting in the bus stop and crying because he can't, he's fine, he's overwhelmed with the situation he is in. I thought that was beautiful. And the humor, I must talk about the humor in your book. Again, you very strategically used humor. There are tense moments, there are moments which are like you're describing incidents which are gripping, but you're slightly putting in that bit of humor. I think that was intentional, or that's the style of writing which you follow.
No, no, that is very intentional. I think humor is a very strategic device. And, I often, if the way I write is funny. I mean, I try to be funny because ultimately,
Okay.
a reader needs to find some joy in the book as well. It's not just about
Absolutely.
the serious issues. But, it's also important not to put too many jokes in there because then it loses its
True.
impact. So, yes, I've strategically tried to insert the jokes only when people don't expect it, so that it's a bit of a surprise for them and they can laugh and then go back to slightly more serious issues. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just take a small break here, and I'll just read out a little, if you don't mind, from one chapter.
No, I don't
Um,
mind at all.
I just wanted to give the viewers little flavor of thing. So here is Karthik. He's at home, and his dad's friends have come, and they are sort of grilling him and questioning him. And I'm reading this out particularly because this is something we ask kids so often, and it's to me a very mind-numbing question. So here it goes. Karthik, said Sridhar uncle, seeing that I was slinking away. What's your favorite subject in school, man? They're all interesting, uncle. Look at this fellow. Such a diplomatic answer. Okay, let's try another way. What does Karthik want to be when he grows up? 2 years ago, I would have swatted this question aside with astronaut. But on hearing two boys say the same at a birthday party, I was determined to shift professions. Pilot had worked well until a grumpy uncle made it known that my spectacles would render me ineligible. I had briefly moved to oceanographer only to be deflated by a lady who had replied, "That sounds so boring." One time on a whim, I had said postman, but everyone, including my dear mother, looked at me as if I had blown up their life savings. Mathematician sounded cool, but that was usually a prompt for a real-time puzzle. Every time I said I wasn't sure, which was in fact the unvarnished truth, it led to more questions. What is this, Karthik? Surely something excites you. Sridhar uncle waited, a hint of mischief in his eyes, ready with a witty retort, irrespective of my response. It was a look so unsettling, so cocky, that it made me want to surprise him, and I blurted out the first thing that came into my head: I want to be a typist. So I thought this is such a real situation which so many kids face, and we adults also subject them to these kind of questions, which I think we all should stop subjecting them to.
Yeah, I think very often adults don't even realize, they think it's a harmless question, which it
Yeah,
often
yeah,
is from their
yeah.
perspective. But look at what the kid is going through, because the kid is being asked this question every day. And, it can't be easy to, when you're 12, to know what you want to do. And of course, you can say whatever and people will move on, but it has an effect, and your reaction to that has an effect. And these are small things that I wanted to bring out because if an adult reading it thinks about it, they will see that
Yes.
it's actually a pretty serious question for a kid.
Absolutely. And look at the way he's observing their responses. He has a cocky smile. He has a mischievous look in his eyes. That is what I thought is. I was like, okay, this is how kids feel when we ask them these questions. Very honestly, which came as a huge enlightenment. I'm like, we all ask these questions to kids, and we should just stop asking these questions. So
I mean,
yes, there are
I
so
mean, just
many
as an
parts.
addendum to that, I mean, just adding to that, we would feel a little awkward if we were to ask an adult, like, what do you want to be in 10 years' time, or something like that,
Absolutely,
You
yeah,
would, you
yeah,
would not go up to a 25-year-old and say, what do you want to be when you're 35? That would be like the 25-year-old say, what's your problem? I'll do whatever I want to be. But for a kid,
exactly.
you don't think about that at all. So, those are the kind of things that we need to really be careful when we're talking to them about.
And it's actually so much of pressure on the child, because in a room full of people, if he's being asked and he has to find this perfect answer which will please his parents, which will please everybody, I thought, this kind of pressure we really shouldn't subject any child to, very honestly. So I think, I mean, that kind of humor was something I thoroughly enjoyed. So now you tell me one thing, since you said you were very close to your grandfather also. Who is your favorite character, Karthik or Tata? Because Tata is a beautifully etched character, I must say. I enjoyed reading about Tata.
Yeah, I enjoyed writing about Tata as well. As I said,
Okay.
a lot of him has been drawn on my own grandfather. My own grandfather was in the army, like the pre-independence army, which was the British Army.
Okay.
But despite, I mean, it was a little odd. It's very paradoxical for those who fought for the British to then be patriotic. Because many of them were seen as unpatriotic because they fought for the British. But he was intensely patriotic. Um, he lost a leg in the war, in the Second World War, and he made a living as a typist. So all that
So very
is true.
similar to Karthik's Tata.
Very similar to Karthik's Tata. But as my grandfather wasn't that religious, and he wasn't that. He was actually quite liberal in his outlook, and he wasn't that conservative. But again, as I mentioned earlier in the chat, I wanted to make the family conservative to contrast with the rowdiness of the school. So I mean, the grandfather was the most obvious person to make as religious and conservative because he's much older and things like that. So yeah, but he was very particular about, he was a remarkable man for his age because, he was very secular. He had a vision that, which a lot of people in India today don't seem to have. I mean, it seems a little outdated today, but it was actually a grand vision for India and its future and things. And for me, as a 12-year-old, 10-year-old, listening to that, it was very inspiring.
And it shows, because his character is something you want to read again. And though, I mean, there are moments he's waking up Karthik at 5:30 a.m. and asking him multiplication tables, and you've written it so well that you yourself feel the tension and the pressure that, oh, poor boy has to now blurt out multiplication tables at 5:30. But yeah, I thought he was a very endearing character next to
But
after Karthik.
at the same time, Karthik's grandfather also has a manipulative streak about him. I mean,
Yes,
at the end of the day, he's
absolutely.
trying to get Karthik to, excel in academics, and he's gently turning the screws so that he can excel for his
Calibrating
own,
them.
yeah,
Yeah.
for his own joy, for his own satisfaction, which actually has a detrimental effect on Karthik and the decisions he makes and many things that he does, as you will read in the book. I mean, Karthik actually ends up doing a lot of things simply to please his grandfather, and those things are not
Absolutely.
necessarily the right decisions.
And the way I think the grandfather makes all those little activity schedule this time. I mean, just reading them, I'm like, okay, no child should be subjected to this kind of schedule. I thought that was, yeah. So there are so many things which parents in this session who have tuned in will find relatable. That, oh my God, this is what I do. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should think about it. Things like that. There's one more thing which I noticed, that as a child in a school, and particularly I would say boys' school, but I think nowadays it really doesn't matter. Applies to girls also. It's always, the road is always forked. There's always there are always two ways. Either you choose the unpopular, tough one, or you choose the more popular, easy one. So it's pretty tough on them to make that decision. And Karthik comes across many such incidents where he has to, and he's sort of sometimes chosen the middle ground, and so he has. Um, the other thing which is related to this, which I think I found very interesting, was the whole capacity for forgiveness, which Karthik shows later, right? When he actually decides to forgive the person, whoever. I mean, I don't want to spill the beans here. And I thought that was very, very crucial, because in today's world, that is one thing which kids really need to focus on, along with, I would say, empathy. Particularly in the new world that they are sort of going into. So, as a author, as a parent, what would you say are those few skills which children should need to focus on, besides the whole capacity of forgiveness, kindness, empathy, which are the prerequisites now? What else do you think? Maybe 2-3 skills which children should have.
I think children already have a lot of skills within them. I mean, and one of the book, one of
Absolutely.
the
Resilience is one of them.
yeah, and one of the themes in the book is that Karthik is already very strong within. It's just that he doesn't know it. He thinks he's weak. He thinks he's going to be, coward, but he doesn't. He comes through. And, I think what kids should really focus on, and what parents should also focus on, is to bring out what is within the kids and make them aware that they are good. Very often all that we're telling kids is what they're not good at. And the title of the book is pretty much a dig on that, where you say what's wrong with you more often than what's right with you. You rarely, you as a parent, you're thinking, oh, he has to, or he or she has to get this right, and they have to do this perfectly. And, we are the ones who have to give them feedback, and all that is fine. But I think it's also important from time to time to recognize what they're doing right, and reward them for it, and reinforce that it's fine, and tell them you can do it, you're strong. I mean, you may not have done it today, but you will do it tomorrow. It doesn't mean that you won't do it. So I think those are things that the book tries to bring out, and I think we should focus on. I mean, I think kids have a remarkable ability to go through life that many of us adults don't have. I mean, kids have a resilience. For them, what happens today is not...
I think this quarantine also proved that to many of us.
Absolutely. And they can forget easily. They can forgive remarkably well. They have great empathy when they need to. They have, we have a lot to learn from them. And what we have to bring out is the goodness within them, and make it even more, shine the light on that.
And you have so beautifully, in fact, mentioned this, that, Karthik feels that he's not neat enough, he's not good enough. And, the adults are always looking for areas of improvement, like where he should improve. And yeah, that is something we all should, put our thinking caps on and ponder on, that, let's not look at that, and let's, as you said, highlight what's good in them. And
I think there's a line where Karthik says, even if I had scored 100 on 100 in each exam, my father would have still wanted to find areas of improvement. And,
yes, absolutely. Yes, that's the line I was referring to. That's the line I was referring to. And at the end, you also, focus on one more thing which really struck me, is this whole thing of when both his teacher and his father towards the end tell him that focus more on the journey than the destination. When the math teacher says that don't think of the answer, but go step by step, work on doing that correctly. And even the father says that, because he gets a promotion and he's sort of posted somewhere else. So I thought that was also a very good message on, because as parents, as sometimes overambitious parents, they're always looking at targets, and you have to achieve that. I think the journey is far more important than reaching the target or keeping the target in mind constantly. I thought that was a great message.
Yeah, and parents know this. They follow this very often in their lives. And if If they themselves were thinking of the destination, then they would be miserable because, daily they have so many challenges. But the fact is, many of them forget to impart that same lesson to their children. And so I wanted Karthik's father to, despite all that happened in the initial stages and despite all his expectations and pressure, I wanted him to reach a stage where he also chills down a bit. He also feels, okay, Karthik will sort of get there as long as he's just thinking of, what he's doing and not where he must be.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the other thing is, I think for teachers and educators to also think of different ways of dealing with issues maybe in boys schools, because I think things are, as I said, things are still the same. The issues which are there in a all boys school particularly are all the same. So maybe a little more empathy from teachers, from educators in such schools.
Yeah, I mean, one of my teachers actually got back to me after reading the book. And, I was a little nervous what my teachers would think about it because, again, I have let out quite a few secrets. But she said this is exactly what we see year after year, batch after batch. And she said her two sons had also gone to the same school, like my school.
Okay. So the
So
school is a real, the name is a real, I mean, as in it's, that school exists?
no,
St. George's?
the name is changed, but the school is
Okay.
St. Joseph's Boys High School in Bangalore,
Oh,
which is my
St.
school.
Okay, St. Joseph's. Okay.
Yeah, St. Joseph's Boys High School in Bangalore, which is also Rahul Dravid is an esteemed alumni of that school. So
Oh, okay.
yeah,
He
and so
has
which
a,
is
I think there's a blurb. Rahul
yeah,
Dravid's blurb is there on your book, right?
yeah. I wanted him to read the book because I knew he would relate to it, and he loved it, and he gave a nice blurb for the book as well. So
Let me
yeah,
let me let me read out the blurb for those who are here. This is Rahul Dravid, who's written fun, entertaining, a book full of characters and people you will identify with if you studied in Bangalore in the 80s and 90s. A well-written, delightful read, even if you didn't. So that was Rahul Dravid's words.
yeah, very sweet of him. And so she wrote, but because her two sons had also gone to that school, she said, "I know exactly what you're talking about because my sons went through similar challenges. They went through a similar process, and these are things that even though the book is set 30 years ago, around 30 years ago, we still see." And yes, so it's I think what she was trying to imply was how teachers need to continue to play such an important role in how to deal with these boys, because very often uh, in an all boys school the teachers intervene only when they absolutely have to, because
True.
otherwise they'll be intervening every few minutes because boys can
Yeah,
be
true.
crazy and they can really take things to the limit. So the teachers, as far as in my experience, they intervened only when things got totally out of hand. But I think there has to be some way in which you find a way to deal with these other small issues that are making having a big impact on victims, especially who are being bullied and who are being picked on and who are having a hard time. Maybe
And some of them are
regular.
scarred for life. Some of them are scarred for life. You know, it takes
Absolutely.
years to come out of that trauma.
Absolutely. As I said, in an interview to a newspaper, I said, I feel I had a good childhood, and I have very fond memories of my childhood. But there are many people in my class who don't. And writing this book allowed me to think of what they might have gone through and how it might have scarred them. And it's not
True.
funny. I mean, it's not. And I obviously had a part to play as well. Not that I was picking on people, but I was a silent observer. I didn't,
True.
I was too young to stand
By
up
not
for.
raising your voice.
Yeah, I was silent. So I was also a part of this whole thing. And so how does one ensure that 5 years later things are at least slightly better, if not, things can't change drastically, but you have to
No,
try
it
and
can't. It
improve.
can't.
You have to
But you
try
have
and
to look,
improve.
yeah, you have
Yeah.
to look for small flickers of change which will then lead to a larger fire.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, so what next, Siddharth? Will Karthik now enter IIT or he'll enter the corporate world?
No, I don't know. And I actually didn't think of this as having a sequel or anything
Okay.
like that. Some people have said, now that you've written 1 year in his life, why not continue and write, more years of his life, like, make
Oh,
it
okay.
like an Enid
No, I
Blyton
was
or
thinking more on it's like this typical Bollywood movies like 20 Saal Baad type, So,
it could. I haven't thought about it yet, but yeah, maybe if there is a situation in which Karthik and a few of his school friends and somebody else can come
Ponchi
together.
and all those ammonia and who know whatnot.
Yeah, maybe they could be, but no, that's not on my radar at the
Okay.
moment. So I thought of Karthik for so long. It's a relief to sort of let him be and move
But
on.
is something playing in your mind for your second novel?
Yes, absolutely. There, I have an idea in my mind. I have a couple of characters in my mind, but it's taking its own time. So I won't be able to. Even I can't say what it is because then it would just be me saying not saying anything concrete. But yes, But it's nothing to do with Karthik, nothing to do with school, nothing to do with boyhood. This is
Okay.
now. I think I would like to write about adults.
Okay. And throw some light on how we are going wrong between us, in our interpersonal relationships. And yeah, I mean, that would be good. And I'm sure it'll have your trademark humor. It has to have your trademark humor.
Yeah, so I think the challenge for me, I like taking a serious topic and then mixing up a bit of humor in it because I like books that have some funny touches. So definitely it will have humor. But so the challenge then is to ensure that the seriousness and the humor are contrasted well.
Absolutely.
But one of the themes that I am very interested in is masculinity, and I think we don't at least in the Indian context we don't talk about it as much. And with
True.
all that has happened in the last few years with Me Too and with generally the talk about equality and things, I think one way to understand uh, men or one way to raise our boys better is to understand how they behave in all male settings, and
Yeah.
that is the kind of things that continue to fascinate me. And yeah, maybe the next book will have something on those lines as well.
Good. And we are all looking forward to your next book. And
Well, I mean,
the
it's not even on the horizon, but hopefully at some point it will come. Yes.
I'm sure, and it will have. And I must mention that particularly for me, that the humor worked a lot because I read your book when there was people were ill in my family, so it was a bit of a tense situation, and I would sit whenever I would get time, and there would be these fits of laughter coming once in a while. So it really helped and really worked, and so looking forward to that. And wow, I mean that was lovely.
Yeah,
Thank you
and I
so
have to
much.
mention, thank you. I have to mention there is a comment here from Siddharth, another
Yes,
Siddharth.
Siddharth also is happens to be my school friend. So there is Siddharth posting a comment for another Siddharth. He's saying, "Could picture Swami of Malgudi days."
Yeah, which is a great compliment for me because R.K. Narayan is one of my inspirations and heroes. And Malgudi Days, Swami and Friends, those are like books that I grew up with. And they had a huge influence on me. And I'm sure, and there have been people who have read this book who have said, it's a modern day, like a modern day Swami and Friends. So
Absolutely, even
this
I
is
felt
a
that. Absolutely.
great compliment. Thank you for that, Siddharth.
And also the whole 90s era which you've brought alive beautifully, the competition success review, North Star quiz book, and a whole lot of other things which you mentioned which kids nowadays have no clue of, but people who have you know who were sort of growing up in those years will relate to. So I thought that was also very well done.
Yeah, thank you. I,
So
I think at the end of the day, I wanted this book to also be like a historical document, not a document in terms of a factual document because all this is made up, but you
more of
realize
the
how
cultural
life
landscape.
how life was back then. And so I had to get all those things right. So I did a bit of newspaper research, and I wanted to make sure that, these things happened in 93 and 94, and that it didn't happen in 91 or 95, because I wanted to get that time frame right. So if you see, there are mentions of Choli Ke Piche and things like
I
that,
know. Yes, yes, yes.
which all happened around then. So that was part of my sort of newspaper research that I did around that period.
Research. Okay. Okay. So that was lovely. And at the end, I just wanted to ask you, as far as this whole period of all of us being in this new world is concerned, any learnings which you have come across in these last few months, which you will carry forward as we go on to a so-called new world? Any
I think,
learnings, any changes?
yeah, I think for me personally, I mean, it's just brought out how uncertain anything is. Like today, we are all talking and this and that, but tomorrow, who knows? Somebody, we may not be around, our dear ones may not be around. So I've actually made it a point to reach out to people a little more, ask them how they are, and if I have to thank somebody for something, I've made it a point to thank them, because I don't know if
True.
they're going to be around tomorrow. So all that has made me a little more, giving as a person. I feel that I need to use this time as best as possible, and to make whoever I want, whoever is dear to me, know that, hey, I'm thankful for what you did back then. In fact, I'm on Twitter, and I've been posting. I even posted a thread thanking my first boss for hiring me and all, which are things I would have never done.
Oh,
But
wow. Okay.
but
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 that's
I feel
wonderful.
but I feel, we have to, because I don't want to be in a situation where something happens and then I'm like, oh, I should have said something back
No
then. So
regrets. Yes,
I
yes,
think I think
absolutely.
that has happened. The other thing is, of course, just to be kind to people. I mean, we are living in a world where people can be very rude and mean. But in this kind of a situation, the first thing that you want to do is that, irrespective of your politics or your identity, to just be kind and empathetic and be like, okay, now we are all in this situation together. The
Absolutely.
whole world is
Absolutely.
has this single, problem. So why not, combine and be with each other? I mean, it's easier said than done, and it sounds very idealistic. But I think in our own
No, but
little ways, we
that
can.
is the call of the hour. I mean, empathy is something, and in fact, I mentioned this a little while ago, that empathy is something uh, we really need to look at. I mean, even those who are not empathetic maybe should, think about it and turn a newer shade in the new world.
Yeah, and it doesn't take much. I mean, you can just avoid saying something rude. How difficult is
Absolutely.
that? I mean, that's just a simple thing. For all you know, the other person is going through a hard time. They've lost a job, or there's somebody in their family who is tested positive. There are so many things that could be happening. So just be polite. Or just be considerate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. I mean, that's something all of us should follow, really. So, Siddharth, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation and for the book. And we're looking forward to more books from you and more such conversations. So, wish you all the best. And thank you once again. My best wishes to your family and loads of love to your kids also. Uh, Thank you. And I think it's morning there. So, good morning and have a lovely rest of the Saturday,
Yeah, I
rest of
just
the weekend too.
I just heard my girls. I think they're up now. So yeah,
Okay.
it promises to be a fun weekend. And thank you for doing this. I'm grateful for people like you who are doing these events on Instagram, and generally grateful for people who are reading books seriously, writing about them, um, and discussing them, because I think we need more of that. And grateful.
Thank you so much. Bye bye. Take
Bye
care.
bye. Yeah.
Bye. So that was Siddharth Vaidyanathan. I'm so sorry. Hope you enjoyed this session of Mocha Moments. I'll be back soon. I have a special surprise for the 19th weekend. I have a special session planned. So do watch out for my posts. I will keep you informed. This was a wonderful conversation on not only the book, but a lot of issues which we need to speak about, which we need to familiarize ourselves with, which we need to educate ourselves on, which we need to raise awareness on. I'm quite sure all of you enjoyed what Siddharth said about the book, about the various issues that we spoke on. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you soon. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.